like, and subscribe. And we back in the Huxtable's household today, right? This is a classic episode rant from season 7. Season 7, episode 3 to be exact. The last barbecue. Okay? Now, before we start this, we gotta mention that this episode features Elvin and this lame dude right here with the civil rights movement mustache. Yes, Navy Boy Martin. Now, I know hate is a strong word, but we don't like him. Okay? And yes, I said we. Yep. And I say that because I'm using YouTube propaganda against him. Yes, don't worry. He's going to have his own bio episode where I plan to bash him, give or take between 15 to 35 minutes. So don't worry. Don't worry about that, okay? Now, we also got to talk about Cliff's freakdom. Yes, freakdom. Freakdom. Now, understand, Cliff Huxtable was before his time, right? He practiced in his basement. He's a doctor, right? He works from home. He delivers babies. Because out of all the type of doctors there are, ear, nose, throat, orthopedic, pediatric, Cliff chose a unique doctor path, right? Like I said, he delivers babies. He's a gynecologist, right? He knows his way around those foreign parts that's left unknown, let's just say. See, understand that he's a doctor and he may or may not have access to certain drugs, such as liquid MDMA. Yes. If you don't know what MDMA is, please do your own research. This is an educational video. But Cliff has been drugging his family with liquid MDMA in his barbecue sauce for years. And it finally comes out this episode, right? Now, you also got to be mindful that this Cliff and Claire freakdom was shown many times throughout the series. How many times have you saw Cliff and Claire in bed, during the ending credits, and they make little cute jokes before the camera stop rolling, of course, and they have freaky time? Yes, if those cameras were rolling 10 minutes longer, we would have got a whole different type of Cosby Show, if you know what I mean. But that leads us to the beginning of the episode, right? And we see Cliff inhaling all that bad smoke from the grill. And Olivia, she's so cute. She comes out and asks Cliff, what are you doing? Right? And Cliff replies, I'm cooking. I can do this in the rain. I can do it in the snow. I can do it in the heat. It's really a thing of man against nature. And Olivia says, Dr. Huxtable, maybe you should cook inside. And walks off because she's cute. And she's taking Rudy's spot, right? She's the cute little girl on the show now, right? It's neither here nor there. And now we see the family, right? Looking at Denise's wild wedding photos that nobody was invited to. And then lame-ass Navy Boy Martin says, it's hard to believe in 1 week we would have been married a whole year. As if this is his first marriage. Dude, who are you fooling? You've been married before. So how is it hard to believe that? But that's neither here nor there, right? And then you got Elvin committing the number one sitcom sin. They do this every damn sitcom. Sometimes, it's always going to be somebody cooking, right? And they're never a chef. And then they taste whatever they're making. And they put the spoon back in the dish, and it just contaminates the whole dish. I can't stand this, right? But he's making a sauce talking about, I think I taste oregano. And Claire let his lame ass know, look, you're wasting your time, Elvin. That's Cliff's secret sauce. He's taking that recipe to the grave. And Elvin's crazy. He's still contaminating the sauce, right? He tests the spoon again and says, no, he's not. It's orange juice. Then Cliff walks in and Elvin says, hey, Dad, but Cliff laughs because he knows he's trying to make his secret sauce, but Elvin don't know his liquid MDMA in that, though. He don't know. And now we go back to Denise Theo, Sandra, and Martin. You know, they're looking at the photos, right? And Denise says, oh yeah, the bridal shower. Oh, it was so nice for you guys to do that when I came back. We got the food processor, the blender, and then Cliff jumps in and says, and maybe someday when you get your own home, you'll be able to use them. And Theo says, wait a minute, you had a bridal shower, but nobody gave Martin a bachelor party? And Martin says, well, I did, kind of. After the wedding, guys on the ship threw me a little bash. My man Purdy put on a grass skirt, stuffed a bra, did a little hula dance. You know what they say about us Navy guys. And Theo cuts him off right before he comes out the closet, right before. And says, Martin, man, that's pathetic. No matter what Purdy looked like, that's not a bachelor party. That's a mockery. Now, I think we should throw you a real bachelor party. And you know what? Like, I never thought I would say this, but Theo, you're showing signs of poonhoundism. Very shocked. Why are you so randy, Theo? You know, this dude is on his second marriage. He doesn't seem to care as much about this bachelor party as you. Plus, he's married to your attractive but bum, homeless, and unemployed sister, Denise. Right? But anyway, Theo asks Elvin, what he thinks, right? And Elvin don't care because he's been married, into the family basically since like season 2, right? And he says, oh yeah, you know me, party Elvin. And Denise tells Martin, I think you should have a bachelor party. It's important with all that male bonding. And Theo says, yeah, man, so let's bond. Very like poonhound, right? I'm shocked. That's neither here nor there, though. But yeah, he's like, yeah, let's bond, right? And Martin, who is also homeless, says, well, if you want to do it for me, I'm yours. And Theo tells Martin, we're going to go all out for you. Spare no expense. This is going to be live. So now we see Theo on the phone trying to get some ladies from the titty bar in Manhattan. You got to remember, this is like almost, the last season of the Cosby Show. So Theo's out here exploring his Huxtable oats, right? So he's on the phone trying to trick and set up the move. He's talking about, all right. So how much did the entire party run you, Denny? And, he ain't like that number. So he was like, all right, well, what about if we lose the band and the food? See, Theo's going out cheap. So we already know, right? Cliff's money has nothing to do with this. He's not attached to this because Theo's going out cheap, right? Then Theo says, all right, a stripper? Yeah, it is traditional, and Martin is a traditional guy. Now, Denise broke ass walks in on this, right? And she starts to feel insecure. This is the same feeling Cliff felt when she couldn't live up to, her parents' legacy at Hillman, right? But Theo don't know. And he's on the phone trying to get some prices, of course. He's saying, so how much did the stripper cost you for your brother's bachelor party? All right, get back to me. Let me know. Then he hangs up, right? And Denise, she don't like that. She blitzed Theo. She's like, a stripper? And Theo says, yeah, we're getting one for Martin's party. And then he says, Theo, please, I hardly think Martin's going to go for something so sophomoric. And Theo says, I don't know, Denise. You heard him go on about his shaky Navy cross-dressing man, Purdy. It sounds to me like a guy who felt cheated. I mean, besides, he's in the Navy and you know how they are. And then he says, you're talking about my Martin. I don't think he'll appreciate you stereotyping him like this. And Theo is thinking, please, your man is living in the house I grew up in. And now we see Martin walking in with all this damn ice. Like they running a damn smoothie shop. And it's like, like he's coming through, like he's helping out with this. He's talking about something. Theo, another bag is in the car. And I know Theo's like, what, how much ice do we need? Like, I know you like to do a lot. People, this is a common broke tendency, right? Broke behavior. People that don't have a lot, they like to do more on the smaller things. Random quick example. Let's say you have a roommate who's not fulfilling his grocery. Like he's eating more than he's paying. But he's going to bring up the fact that, well, I always bring those plastic forks in because he don't have it like that, right? But anyway, getting back to it. That's similar to this ice situation, right? But anyway, getting back to it, right? So Denise says, Martin, wait till you hear this. Theo wants to hire a stripper for your bachelor party. And Martin says, a stripper? No. And him and Theo do a little laugh like they both on the same time. And what time is that? Freaky time. Yep, but now we're in the kitchen and Sandra asks Denise, something wrong? You know us irrelevant light-skinned Huxtable sisters got to stick together. And Denise says, Theo's hiring a stripper for Martin's party. And Sandra says, does Martin know about this? And Denise says, he seems fine with it. Then Elvin walks in and Sandra says, don't worry, Denise. He's not a lost cause. This man was the world's biggest male chauvinist until I turned him around. Isn't that right, sweetheart? And Elvin says, what's that, Muffin? See, because nobody pays attention to the light-skinned Huxtable sisters, right? And Sandra says, did you know Theo is hiring a stripper for Martin's bachelor party? And Elvin says, oh, really? Well, if that's what Martin wants, you know. And Sandra says, wait a second, do you approve of this? And Elvin, who is minding his damn business, says, it's not up to me. It's like a dinner party. If they're eating scampi, you just eat scampi. You have to be a good sport. And for the record, Sandra's outfit looks crazy. Okay? And granted, this lady just had quote unquote twins. And her chest don't look like it. Like, ma'am, those early 90s breast pumps must have been crazy, right? Like, she looks like what I would imagine Alicia Keys looked like at her 12th birthday party, right? But nonetheless, Sandra says, I can't believe they're doing this. And Claire walks in and says, what are they doing? And who's doing it? And Sandra says, Martin, Elvin, and your son Theo. They're hiring a stripper for Martin's party. Like, sweetie, everybody's grown. You tattletelling, not about to do anything, right? This isn't 1981 when you was in this house every day, right? And Claire asks, well, what did they say when you told them that tassels and pasties don't make it in this family? And the girls say, we didn't. And Claire's like, why not? I thought I raised you to speak your minds. So now Cliff walks in the fire, right? And Claire asks, Cliff, did you know the boys are hiring a stripper for Martin's bachelor party? And he says, I know. And Claire asks, well, what do you think about that? And Cliff says, I think it's demeaning and stupid. I don't agree with it. And Claire says, well, did you tell him that? And Cliff says, I'm not married to them. They can watch whatever they want. See, I'm married to you. Now, if you're watching a stripper, then that's it. And then Claire asks Cliff, well, what's that in your hand? And Cliff say, oh, it's my barbecue sauce. And then Claire asks, well, what's that on the stove? And Cliff says, that's the decoy. Meaning that's the sauce for the kids, right? You know, he has 2 batches, right? And Claire starts laughing because she already know what time it is when that barbecue sauce touchdown, right? Them pupils are going to be as wide as the moon, right? Now we're outside in the backyard and Denise walks out and tells Martin, hey, sweetheart, you know, I've been thinking, I support the idea of you and the other men having a bachelor party. It's just that I feel some of your party plans are a little bit insensitive to me and the other woman in this family. And Martin asks, did I do something wrong? And Denise just says it. She's like, you want the stripper, don't you? And Martin says, baby, you heard what I said in the house? I told him no. And Sandra is coaching Denise through this, right? She makes her walk over there and Denise says, actually, sweetheart, darling, you didn't say no. You said no. And Martin says, well, what was I supposed to say? And Denise says, I think you should have said, Theo, shame on you. I will not tolerate this sophomoric vulgarity. And Martin laughs and says, yeah, that certainly sounds like me, huh, Elvin? And Sandra gives him the silence of the lamb stare. And Elvin is like, yeah, I'm not even in this. And Sandra says, great, Elvin. You're not involved, but you're willing to watch a woman being used as a man's plaything. And Elvin, who never even said that out of his mouth, says, I'm just going to the party. And Sandra, you know, who's her mother's child, a true lawyer, says a party where a woman is hired to strip while you whoop and holler and claw. And Elvin punks up. He says, hey, who's clawing? I'm in the back. I'm not even looking. And Denise says, I don't understand why men watch strippers anyway. And Sandra agrees and she says, let's be honest. All of it is just a lot of titillating and teasing and feeding men's fantasies. And then he says, yeah, what fun can that be? The woman strips, she leaves, and you guys are left what? Chug-a-lugging beer? And Elvin says, see, look, I don't even like beer. And second of all, it's just a form of entertainment that some people happen to like the Scampy example I gave you earlier. And Sandra says, Elvin, it's stupid, it's disgusting, and it exploits women. And Martin says, now, whoa, this is getting one-sided. What about the clubs where men strip for women? Aren't those men being exploited? What do you think, Dr. Huxtable? And Cliff says, I think that this sauce is excellent. And continue to mind his business, right? Because, see, we almost in the final season. And he's legit ready for everybody to move out of his house. You know, he's about sick of y'all. Really, he really is, right? And Denise says, women view men much differently than men view women. And Sandra says, men are ogres. And Martin says, oh, so women don't ogle? And Sandra, of course, moves the goalpost by saying, there's a difference in the quality of ogling. And Denise adds on, yes, you know, women just look, but men, you guys x-ray. And Elvin says, I do not x-ray. Well, I mean, when I'm a doctor, but I don't x-ray unless there's a machine nearby. And Theo walks in and says, I'd sure like to x-ray while I need a Lomax. And then he's like, hold on, what y'all talking about? And Sandra walks over and judge her little brother as if she didn't see this boy grow up. You know, as if they're not raised by the same parents. She says, this is the perfect example of an X-raying male. Women have to make themselves sexy because men like him are obsessed with the perfect female form. And Theo says, who's obsessed? And Denise says, come on, Theo, I've been shopping with you. You scope out the mannequins. And Martin says, well, I know I'm not obsessed. And Denise says, Martin, please, look at the magazines, the calendars. Men prefer women with curvaceous figures. As if he's not with her. Like, you look like Michael Jackson. And you dropped out of Hillman. But anyway, let me get back. And Theo says, she's right, let's be honest. No man wants a woman with floppy hips and flabby wings. And Sandra says, that is the shallowest thing I've ever heard, Theo. And Elvin jumps in and says, oh, and women don't want the same thing from us? And Martin says, that's true. You expect us to stay in shape. And Theo says, and I, for one, I'm tired of having to make myself look beautiful for women. What do they want from me? And Elvin says, why can't we just have simple bodies like Dad? And Cliff looks back and says, oh, I'm not your father, sir, but carry on. You know, one more season of this and I don't have to worry about you guys ever again. And Sandra has the audacity to say, Elvin, I don't know what you see when you look in the mirror, but your body is not complicated. And Elvin says, thank you, sweetheart. I'll keep my feelings about your body to myself. And now Sandra mad, even though you just insulted him, right? She asks, what feelings? And Elvin say, your neck. It's just a shade thin. Sometimes I wonder how you even swallow. And now they have turned this into a war. Denise says, my sister endured 8.5 hours of labor trying to bring your children into this world. And you criticize her neck? And Elvin says, shut up. You don't even have a job. And I wouldn't have said anything if she hadn't said my body was uncomplicated. I'm very happy with your body. Then Sandra yells, then why do you want to see that stripper? And Elvin says, I don't. He does, throwing Martin under the bus. And Martin says, me? I never said I wanted a stripper. I said no. And Denise says, no, you said no. And Cliff is sick of these people by now. He's like, all right, settle down, everybody. Come on, barbecue. Let's eat. Come on now. And Martin says, ladies first, and tries to hand his wife a plate, right? And Denise says, don't you patronize me. And Martin says, huh? I'm being polite. And Elvin says, yep, you know, you're polite. They say you patronizing. You're not. They say you're a pig. And Theo says, yeah, you see, they don't know what they want. And Claire says, Theo, I would stay out of this. You have caused enough trouble. And Theo asks, what did I do? And Denise says, you hired the stripper. And Theo says, it wasn't me. Martin wanted her. throwing his lame ass under the bus. And this causes Martin to kirk off in the house that, he don't pay no bills in, right? And he say, when will somebody believe me? I said no. And Denise jumps on him again and says, no, you said no. Ha 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 ha. And Sandra's still feeling some type of way because, her neck, right? She says, okay, fine, Elvin. I'll just wear turtlenecks for the rest of my life. And they both continue to argue and bicker, right? This is the light-skinned Huxtable sisters, right? These are the most insecure women in sitcom history. Hell, the sitcom universe. These are probably the most insecure but decent looking women that you've ever seen, with the exception of Sandra. Unless you like Sandra, look, teach his own, but let me get back though. Now we see everybody eating, and Rudy and Kenny just came back from a cool mall date. And Martin asks Elvin if he would like some corn, and Elvin says, after you, Martin. And Martin says, oh, thank you. How polite and unpatronizing. And Sandra asks Denise if she would you like some potato salad? And Denise says, I wouldn't want to get too hippie. And Martin, who's a freeloader, says, well, I would like some. I don't mind getting hippie. May I have some chicken as well? And Denise says, would you like a breast? Oh, no. You're more of a leg man, aren't you? And Elvin says, this is absolutely ridiculous. I'd like some chicken, please. And Sandra says, oh, which piece? And Elvin, he was like, all right. He's messed up though, right? He's like, a wing. I'll just take a wing. And Olivia says, I can't take this. I'm going to watch the news. And she walks out of the episode. Like, this episode is too grown for her. She's cute, And then, what do you know? Cliff Parents walks in, right? And Grandpa Huxtable says, well, look at this family. Hold on, I got to get a picture of this. And Grandma Huxtable says, with so much trouble in the world today, it's nice to see a warm, loving family all together. Come on, Russell, let's put this dessert in the kitchen. And Grandpa Huxtable say, hey, nobody touch that piece right there. I'm a leg man myself. And Denise can't let it go. She says, great. It runs in the family. And Martin says, okay, for one, I'm not even related to that feminine ass man. And two, give it a rest, Denise. And Sandra says, there we go again, male domination. And Elvin is mad now. He says, what do you mean? The man is trying to eat in peace. And why am I eating this stupid wing? Give me a breast, the big one. And Grandpa Huxtable says, whoa, what's going on? And Claire says Theo wanted to get a stripper for Martin's bachelor party. And Grandpa Huxtable asks, well, what's wrong with that? And Sandra says, what's wrong with that? Did you have a stripper at your bachelor party? And Grandpa Huxtable says, no, she was more of a fan dancer. Her name was Fatima. She was a very talented performer. She had these blue ostrich feathers she would hold in front of herself, and she'd do this little dance to the music. Bésame mucho, bésame mucho. Then she'll give you a little shoulder and take it back. Then she'll give you a little leg and take it back. Man, she was something. She could suck a golf ball through the pitsy stick straws. Yeah, but that's neither here nor there. I heard you call me feminine earlier, Martin. And Sandra says, Grandma, that didn't bother you? And Grandma Huxtable says, we didn't think too much of those things then. And Kenny says, yeah, the good old days. And Rudy, nudge him like, shut up. And Denise says, Grandma, that sounds so sexist. And Grandma Huxtable says, times were different. People didn't make a big deal out of everything. If you spend all your time fussing over points of contention between men and women, you won't have too much time for romance. And then the grandparents go into the kitchen and Martin says, I guess they must have some idea what they're talking about. They've been married for years. And Elvin tells Sandra, yeah, I suppose we could let a few things slide. And now we're in the kitchen and Grandma Huxtable tells her husband, don't touch me. I hated that you had that woman at your party. And Russell says, why didn't you say something? And Anna says, that's when we kept those things to ourselves. And Russell says, you've been holding this in for all those years? And I'm no mind reader? And Anna says, oh, and while you're at it, I hate that fan dance story. Every time I hear it, it sickens me. Give me a little shoulder and take it back. Give me a little leg and take it back. Then you have the audacity to say that she blew your little thing. And now everybody is getting along, except the grandparents. They're raving about the lemon tarts that they just bought in, and here go Grandma Huxtable. Thanks to me, he didn't do a thing to help. He was watching the ice capades. And Grandpa Huxtable says, what? I fly with the pants? And Grandma Huxtable says, and you also fly with the floor. I spent 10 minutes cleaning up after you. What? What are you all looking at? Haven't you seen people argue before? And Denise says, yeah, but not you guys. And Grandma Huxtable tells Denise what her man should have been told her. Oh, grow up. And Grandma Huxtable begins passing out the lemon tarts, right? And Claire says, we haven't finished eating yet. And Grandma Huxtable says, oh, well, you see how upset I am. Dang blame fan dance story. And Grandpa Huxtable says, I had no idea she felt this way. Why didn't she tell me? And Martin says, oh, I know. 1 minute you think you're doing it all right, and the next minute, blam, you're blindsided. And Theo says, yeah, I know. I've been there before. And Clay says, where? Where have you been? You have been nowhere. And that's where you're going to stay if you don't quit stirring up trouble. And everybody begins to argue again, right? And Denise says, wait, you guys, look at Dad. We're ruining his beautiful barbecue. Let's just stop the bickering and let's enjoy the food. And everybody apologizes, right? And Denise says, I want you to have your bachelor party, and I want you to have great food and friends, and you can even have your stripper. And Denise gets up and says, me, because she's still insecure about the whole damn thing, right? And Theo is upset because he don't want to see his unemployed sister dance, right? And Sandra gets up looking whack, talking about, great idea. I think I have some moves myself. Like, sweetie, really, you're built like a 10-year-old. And Grandpa Huxtable tells his wife, Anna, I will never tell that story again. And Grandma Huxtable about to give herself a damn stroke. She gonna say, but you'll think it. And Grandpa Huxtable says, no, I'll be thinking about the same thing I was thinking years ago at that bachelor party. How I can't wait to get at you. And now we see the couples are starting to get along and get touchy. Elvin even tells Sandra he loves her long giraffe neck and tells her it's perfect, like a swan. And Claire tells Cliff, it's certainly nice to see them work things out for themselves. And Cliff says they haven't worked anything out for themselves. It's my barbecue sauce. And Claire says, your barbecue sauce? And Cliff says, yeah, my barbecue sauce. Haven't you noticed after people have some of my barbecue sauce, after it kicks in, they get all Huggy Buggy? And Claire says, you ought to stop. And Cliff says, oh, I'm serious. Haven't you noticed that after one of my barbecues and they have the sauce, people want to get right home? Let me tell you something else. I got a cup of it upstairs on the night table. Yep. I got a cup of it upstairs, I say. I left it up there breathing. Why don't you give up that chicken to these people? And let's get on upstairs and have some sauce. And Claire's off the MDMA, right? She says, here go the rest of the chicken, you guys. And she's about to make her way upstairs, right, for some freaky time. But wait, we see Kenny. And he says, yep, Dr. Huxtable, I love this chicken. You know what, Rudy? You look real nice today. Boy, Cliff took that chicken away so fast. Now, granted, Kenny had a small amount of MDMA in his system, but it's the early 90s, and nobody is going to drug test you unless you smoke pot or crack, okay? So, with that being said, like and subscribe, Randumb Rants.